like maps? How about a detailed hand-drawn map that reflects your favorite people, places, and things? Visit Cartograph Me on Instagram or Facebook and see the possibilities and the works of artist Philip Bailey. Remember, Cartograph Me, putting you on the map. They say the eyes are a window to the soul. This American Jalo is the window to fashion, disco, and white women with terrible braids. Eyes of Laura Mars starts now.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Mom with the new fletch.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
We've got to return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
It's Xylia.
And this is Lana Del Rey's mesh face mask, Mike.
And we are back. We're all wearing our best sequence dresses, fancy heels, and we're ready to disco. We're ready to party.
We're stomping.
Let's jump into the pick this evening. Because I didn't think of a question, guys. I apologize. I know. Terrible.
We may forgive you one day.
Your one job.
My one job, and I failed it. But, Mike, I thought I'd pass it over to you. Why don't you introduce your pick this evening, and then we'll get into the trailer.
Oh, okay. Well, this was my pick, as you said. It is 1978's Eyes of Laura Mars, which has a wonderful cast, a really interesting pedigree behind the scenes, and a spectacular soundtrack. And, Ro, why don't you roll that brilliant disco-fied trailer for us?
In a world of breathtaking models and the beautiful people, Academy Award winner Faye Dunaway is photographer Laura Mars. Her work, the subject of controversy. Tommy Lee Jones is Detective John Neville, intrigued by her photographs for his own reasons.
These are police photographs. They are strictly our own material. They were never published anywhere at all. So my question is very simple.
Why are my photographs so much like yours?
That's right.
Somewhere between the sensations of high fashion and the precise form of her art lies another dimension, unexplored, unexpected. Unwillingly, Laura Mars becomes a witness to a series of murders, watching through the eyes of a killer. Eyes of Laura Mars.
When it happens, I can't see what's in front of me. What I see is that. Think of that camera as the eyes of the killer.
Drawn by a mystery,
Do you understand?
their lives converge. Her world, sensual, dazzling, provocative. His world, demanding, dangerous, violent.
This is incredible. In the midst of all of this, I can't stop thinking of you.
I know.
What is going on?
I don't know. I mean, it's completely unprofessional of me to be walking with you in the woods, I'll tell you that.
I don't have time for this.
I'm supposed to be catching a killer.
I'm completely out of control. I can't I saw him in the elevator, so I'm killed somebody in the elevator.
Pursued by visions, she is linked to a killer. At any place, at any time, a witness. At any moment, a victim of her own eyes. Eyes of Laura Mars.
Okay, and Letterboxd has this to say about this week's movie. A famous fashion photographer develops a disturbing ability to see through the eyes of a killer. The eyes of a Laura Mars, even.
Yeah, I think that kind of gets to the point. This is kind of like a no-frills movie. Well, I mean, lots of frills on the clothes, but
I mean, it's pretty lean and mean, you're right, yeah.
Let's talk about actors in this great film we watched. Mike, why don't you lead us off?
Well, I mean, listen, Laura Mars herself, the queen, the legend, the icon, Miss Fay Ray Dunaway. We know her from such Oscar-winning hits as Network, Mommy Dearest, where she plays Joan Crawford, Chinatown, Bonnie and Clyde, Rules of Attraction, one of our personal favorites. I know all of us love that movie. And literally 800 other TV shows, movies, you name it, she has been in it. She had a really interesting, bizarre career where she does a lot of kind of like weird indie trash, and she does these weird mainstream movies that get a lot of acclaim, and you just kind of find her all over the place. And I mean, she's, been in the game since like the 60s, so this woman has done it all, and, she carries this movie. But yeah, so that's my pick for stars of the movie. What about you guys?
You go, Xylia.
Okay, so Rowan told me that my person was gonna be Brad Dourif.
You make it sound so domineering. You could pick whoever you want.
Everybody knows. Don't worry. I'm not saying anything new. So, obviously, he's in this movie.
This person I'm speaking of stars in this movie.
He also plays the voice of Chucky.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably the most notable, I would say, in terms of, like, him being big in the movie. He's in Blue Velvet, he's in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Lord of the Rings, Dune, Halloween, I think that's the newer one, Urban Legend.
Cult horror icon.
I was gonna say, he's kind of a horror legend for sure.
Another one called Graveyard Shift, never heard of it, but it looks like a horror movie.
Stephen King.
Alien Resurrection.
Yeah, Alien Resurrection. So, I mean, yeah.
And a movie we saw...
What?
Not too long ago, a couple months ago, Death Machine, which was amazing.
Also in Halloween 2, I think that's the newer one as well.
Yeah, he's Sheriff Brackett in the new Rob Zombie's
in the Rob Zombie ones,
He's also in Bad Lieutenant with Nicolas Cage. I've never heard of that, but it has Nicolas Cage.
Oh, that's a remake of an old Abel Ferrara movie.
Oh, nice. I bet it's great, because Nicolas Cage is in it. But yeah, so I mean...
You would jump Nicolas Cage's bones if you ever saw him. I feel like you have the most throbbing hard-on for Nicolas Cage of anybody that I've ever met. And that's saying something.
Only if he did, like, weird faces during...
Is he capable of anything other than weird faces? Like, I feel like that's kind of a given.
We're watching, like, the history of swear words on Netflix.
We just finished it.
Oh, it's done now.
Yeah.
And he's the host of it. I mean, I'm a sucker for Nicolas Cage.
Although I was bringing up, especially in this, like, history of bad words, that the dye job's really, like, noticeable, I find, recently.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I never liked him until I saw Kick-Ass, and that...
Oh my god. god.
His
that
role
was a
in-
game changer.
Yeah, his role in Kick-Ass was just like,
You came
good
to the
call, baby doll. Like, it's just like, I loved him ever since.
You kind of came to the Face Off fan club late in life, I feel.
Yeah, for sure.
Face Off's
Better late than never, though. Better late than never.
Nicolas Cage, if you're listening to our podcast, hit me up. HMU.
Slide into her DMs. She all dick pics are solicited at this point.
Only from Nicolas Cage.
Oh, only, yes, sorry. All Nicolas Cage penis photos are solicited.
Actually, Cecily the other day sent me this thing from TikTok, and it's like a compilation of Nicolas Cage in all these outfits, and it's like, Nicolas Cage is fashion. Duh.
He is fashion. He is everything.
Rowan, who did you assign to yourself?
The Shade Brigade is out tonight. So I decided that I would choose, as we talk about amazing, Oscar nominee type people, Tommy Lee Jones, young Tommy Lee Jones, which I think I'm a little less fond on than Mike, from our text messages during the film.
Don't even go there. I don't understand what your problem is.
I don't think he's very handsome, to be honest.
Okay, well, here's the thing. This is all I'm gonna say about it. In some shots, he is an absolute fox, and then in some, it looks like he's 70 years old.
True.
But I don't know. It's like the hair, that like 70s hair. Like, he's really rocking it.
I do like.
I think it
like
suits
his
the shape
hair.
of his face.
Yeah, I do like his hair.
Now, I think everyone would like to know, were you sure when you sent the text message that said, Tommy Lee Jones can destroy my life?
We don't have to dump the contents of the group chat onto the public. I was sure. We're all sure. And you guys were like, yeah, I know.
Some of the maybe very Oscar-worthy films that my man Tommy Lee's been in.
Can I say one?
Of course.
Batman Forever.
Yeah. Why it didn't win Best Picture, I'm not sure, but...
I love Batman Forever.
Can we talk about how when I was a youngster, I inherited a Batman Forever Tommy Lee Jones, like, frosted glass mug?
Yes, I had the same
I don't know where it was
one.
from, like a gas station or
It's from
McDonald's or something.
McDonald's.
Okay, yeah.
I had one too.
Everybody had those, I swear.
Like, you go to Value Village and it's like Tommy Lee Jones frosted mugs everywhere.
Although I always see them now, like on Facebook Marketplace, people are like $50.
So ridiculous.
But yeah, Batman Forever, Volcano, which I definitely was like one of the only films I saw at the drive-in as a child.
When you say Tommy Lee and not Tommy Lee Jones, I just always think
Tommy
of,
Lee
like,
Jones, excuse me.
Tommy Lee.
Blown Away, I mentioned that because it was a terrible action movie that I used to be scared of when I was little, because in the intro, they slit a guy's throat with piano wire.
Ooh.
And I used to like peek around my room when I was supposed to be sleeping and my parents would watch it, and then I'd like hide because I was scared of that part.
Piano wire is surprisingly sharp.
Very sharp.
It's got those like weird texture on it.
Yeah.
But I feel really like Tommy Lee Jones, like everyone knows No Country for Old Men, Men in Black.
Of course, Men in Black.
The Fugitive.
Here come the men in black.
Oh, musical rendition by Xylia Fraser.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could go
people
on.
the
Everyone
last
knows who Tommy Lee Jones is, I feel. Did you guys have any honorable mentions?
No.
Xylia's already getting to the shade on this film.
She's the listen, the Shade Brigade. The Shade Brigade.
The Shade Brigade.
Listen, the Shade Brigade is real. I mean, we gotta do honorable mention for the late, great Raul Julia.
Okay, yes, of
AKA course. Gomez from the Addams Family films. Like,
he can destroy my
life.
I
thought he was much more handsome.
I mean, he was very handsome his whole life. He's Gomez. He's like, they would only cast somebody who was like ultra magnetic.
Yeah, oozing
yeah,
of
like
romance.
and he just like oozed that. He had that magnetism, that charisma.
He has such.
I feel like
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Anything he was in, he oozed that, right? Like,
I feel like he has such interesting eyes.
Very striking eyes.
And it's not even about the color. It's just like the shape and the look of them.
And he aged very well too. Like, I mean, because if you think Addams Family, like he was fairly, I mean, a lot older than this, and he really didn't look that much different.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but then he died shortly after that. So
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
he died in like the mid-90s.
I didn't know that.
Just in time.
Yeah, he died very suddenly, and he was very young.
He
How
made
did he
sure
die?
to be in Street Fighter, though, so that was the important thing.
Oh yes, he was M. Bison. That's right.
How did he die?
I think it was like a heart attack or something.
That's upsetting.
Xylia's like, I need his entire life biography, Mike. I don't know why I said biography. Some biography.
Oh wait, hang on. I've got it here. No, I don't. It just says he fell in. He suffered a stroke and then he fell into a coma.
That's
yeah.
sad.
Oh,
Yeah.
for some reason I thought you were gonna say fell into a pool. I don't know why.
I mean, the chances are if he had a pool and had a stroke, he was probably near it and might have fallen in it. I don't know.
This is very true. I think it's important to talk about who directed this, Mike, because possibly someone that is responsible for some of the most important sequels of all time.
It's so bizarre. When you look at this movie, it's not like the filmography that you expect from this person. If you don't know who he is and you like go into his IMDb and it's like, oh wow.
I was very
and
surprised.
It's like, holy shit, yeah, like.
Who is it?
So it's directed by Irvin Kershner, I would assume how you say his last name. I don't know, Mike, do you want to rattle off with me, or?
I mean, sure. But I mean, before he did this, he did Up the Sandbox, which was this really weird Barbra Streisand movie from the 70s. But then after this, he did RoboCop 2, and he did fucking Empire Strikes Back. Like, this man has a filmography. Like, you know, Empire Strikes Back is not something to fucking shake a stick at. Like, you write home to Grandma about that. Grandma, I directed Empire Strikes Back.
Probably still, like, the most loved Star Wars movie possibly ever. I know it's my favorite of
I mean,
all
essentially
time.
considered, like, when you look at the original, like, trilogy as, like, a 1, 2, 3, probably one of the most beloved sequels that has ever been filmed.
And then he hit us with RoboCop 2.
Right? Like, just such a bizarre filmography.
And Never Say Never Again.
Yeah.
Got his Bond on. James Bond, that is. So let's talk about first experiences. Is this your first time seeing it? If not, when did you see it? Xylia, let's start with you.
Well, I fell asleep like 3 times.
I know, I have several pictures in the group chat of you asleep on the couch. Oh, you didn't see those?
I didn't. I was really tired. And, so I guess I saw it once in total.
You watched it on 3 separate occasions, but only completed it once.
Exactly.
Well, like Xylia, I didn't fall asleep.
I gotta look for these pictures now.
But this was the first time I saw it. When Mike announced this at the end of Vivarium, I had never heard of it, but I was very interested. So this is my first time seeing it. How about you, Mike?
Well, I haven't watched it in quite a while, but years ago when I was going on my... Well, first of all, I love Faye Dunaway. And one thing that we didn't note when we were rattling off the honorable mentions, and this is actually such an oversight on our part, just because we were just going for, like, director and stars, but, like, it was written by fucking John Carpenter.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
This is a John Carpenter movie, like, and you could tell it has his, like, hallmarks of, like, his thrillers and his TV movies and stuff all over it. But I kind of came into it through the John Carpenter Faye Dunaway connection, and back in the day I used to do a lot of, like, when I was really getting into, like, film theory and film criticism, and then, of course, I've always been heavily into horror and thrillers, and this came up a lot, especially with, like, psychoanalytic film essays on thrillers, because of the, like, eye connection and all sorts of stuff, and the giallo, as you called it earlier. It's kind of like an American giallo / like noir.
Yeah.
So all those things kind of like are in my wheelhouse. So I did watch it a couple of times, like years ago when I was living with the previous roommate who also loves like Faye Dunaway and stuff. And you know, we got like kind of stoned and watched it and like had a really good time. We love Tommy Lee Jones. We love everybody in it. And Brad Dourif, oh my god, she's like a huge Chucky fan and a huge Alien fan. So this was just like, we loved it. Yeah. So but I haven't watched it in years and years and years, and I don't even remember how it came back on my radar. But yeah, I thought about it and I was like, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in this. And you know, some people might go, it's not a horror movie, it's a thriller, but it's also like like I said, it has that giallo element and is kind of like a slasher movie. So I thought this would be a really good choice.
I thought it was kind of like, it reminded me of a more chic version of like Murder, She Wrote.
Murder, Chic Wrote. Yes.
Murder, She Wrote. Yeah.
That's the tagline for this episode, by the way, everybody. So look forward to that when it comes out.
It really, to me, remind me of like a murder mystery.
And it is, but of course it has the horror slashery elements, which,
yeah.
Again, because John Carpenter's involvement in it, that's kind of like, even when he does like more thriller, kind of like mainstream, like TV movies, it always has that like more sinister element that's a bit more like edgy than your normal thriller.
Yeah.
And it brings it a bit closer to like a horror frame, like a horror kind of aesthetic, I guess.
Murder, She Wrote's kind of like a softcore slasher.
It 100% is.
It is.
Like,
I'm
just going to say right now, Jessica Fletcher is like Final Girl Supreme. She survived like 25 seasons of slasher movies. And continues to survive them in the books that are written by Jessica Fletcher that are in your local mystery section of your library and bookstore.
Now, I don't want to get into it too much, because before we talk about this film, Xylia, you gotta hit us with that Bechdel test.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I totally forgot to do it at the time, but I was thinking about it when we sat down here, and for anybody who doesn't know, the Bechdel test is basically this, like, I'm gonna call it...
It's like a rubric.
Yeah, it's like a sociological, literary criticism, I feel, measure about how one-dimensional women are treated in movies or books or whatever, visual media. So basically, are there more than one woman? Is there more than one woman in a scene together? None of that is English properly. But anyways, let's move on. Are they speaking about something other than a man? Are they named? And then my dimension is like the intersectionality dimension. Looking back, I don't think there was a scene with more than one woman that they're talking about something other than man.
Actually, nope. I will have to stop you there because as you were saying it, I'm thinking about it. It's right before Lulu and Michelle get killed. They're in their apartment getting like massaging each other and stuff.
Yeah, but what are they talking about?
I don't remember, but it's not a man.
But
Clearly, they're into each other.
I don't think they were talking though. So
but yes, they were. They were. She was talking to Faye Dunaway on the phone. So first of all, that's 3 women having conversations with each other.
I guess.
Oh yeah, I remember that because they were in their apartment, basically nude, rubbing each other.
Yeah, and then Faye Dunaway calls her. Yeah.
Although that's
she's calling about the killers, isn't she? The killer's a man. But the killer's a man.
But we don't know that the killer's a man at the point.
Okay, I'll just say.
If we're gonna get into like sociological and literary theory and stuff, we have to think of this. This is about the time when Laura Mulvey's visual pleasure and narrative cinema came out, and she's talking about like the male gaze, and this kind of subverts it because you don't know if it's a male or not. Yeah, and you're seeing the first person perspective. It is a male, but you're seeing, but it's like this weird double fold. You're seeing it through Laura's eyes, so it kind of like fucks with the mold of like the male gaze by like filtering it through a female but also a male. Mm-hmm. So it's this weird, I think the Bechdel test in this case is kind of a weird like it's fuzzy, it's got like static, we can't really get a grip on it.
I'll say it technically passed. Also, nothing to do with the actual Bechdel test, but like the photograph she takes, I can imagine in 1978 or whatever, it was 1978 when this came out.
Yeah.
I can imagine that those in the movie itself were like controversial.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what's so funny? The first time I watched this movie, I need to say in background of why I watched this, I have a very strong interest in fashion photography as like an aesthetic, and I was actually thinking about writing some work on it when I was in grad school. That never panned out, but one of the reasons why I wanted to watch it was because this is like kind of like a slashery thriller, with a fashion photographer, with Faye Dunaway in it. Like, why would I not want to see this? And when I was watching it, all I could think about was that the work that she presents in this movie reminded me so much of the photographer, very famous photographer, who we all know as photographs, even if we don't realize it, Helmut Newton. And he does a lot of, like, photographs of, like, nude and, like, semi-nude women, and there's, like, no men at all. And actually, I have a collection of his photographs in a hardcover book called World Without Men, because it's just women. And it wasn't until all these years later when I rewatched it for this podcast that I just did very cursory searching and found out that Helmut Newton actually took the photographs of, like, that are used in the exhibitions for her photographs.
Interesting.
So I literally looked at it and I was like, this is such a Helmut, like, I just thought it was an homage to Helmut Newton, because he would have been, like, at the peak of his fame at the time, and it was actually Helmut Newton photographs. So I just thought that was really cool.
Interesting.
Also, everybody who is listening to this, if you don't know Helmut Newton, like, check out his work. It is spectacular. He's done some really iconic, great photographs of, like, Sigourney Weaver, among other people, Lauren Hutton, like, yeah.
Yeah, I thought like because weren't the photographs essentially like the crime, exactly like the crime scenes?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It was essentially crime scene photographs, but fashion.
Yeah, exactly, but fashion, and it's like the man is killed by the women. I don't know. I just found that, like, really subversive, especially for 1978.
You go, John Carpenter, you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're on that, this is one of the reasons why I find this to be, like, firmly in the genre of horror, is because of the fact that in the movie itself, you know, they acknowledge, like, hey, your photos are controversial, we have a problem with it, they're depraved, they're going to cause people to, you know, want to do harm, and as we saw, they actually do trigger that, you know, sort of in a secondary way. But even though they don't link the two explicitly, I find the fact that John Carpenter wrote this, and they do actually discuss it, because these are the same critiques that are leveled at horror movies.
Yeah.
Especially. Like, it's such, like, I feel like this is almost like just a response to that really pedantic PTA mom critique of horror movies that, like, you know, the weak-minded are just going to be like, see this and want to just mimic it.
Yeah. Well,
right? And I find that all those scenes where they're talking about, you know, like, do you have a responsibility? And, like, the whole thing that she is actually, like, recreating crime scene photos even though she doesn't know it. You know, it's just this really interesting interrogation of aesthetic versus reality, and, like, do you have a responsibility? And actually, you know, like, again, kind of horror and thriller in general historically have been, you know, censored and critiqued and, you know, sort of marginalized because of these, like, really weak arguments. And I just thought it was really interesting. And I think that's why it also has ties to horror, because of that critical element.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Actually, the other night we were at my grandparents' house, and ever since we started the podcast, my poppy keeps asking me, like, do you know about this doll that was in a horror movie? And when they moved back to Nova Scotia in the 80s, he, like, saw the doll. I think he said it was like the early to mid 80s that he had seen this doll, and I guess there was like an outcry about how, like, crazy this doll was or something. Anyways, every time he asked somebody, people would be like, oh, it's probably Chucky, and he's like, it's not Chucky, it's something else. So we were sitting there talking about the podcast after dinner, like, the other day, and I looked up, like, the most, I don't know, disturbing dolls in horror history or something, and I was like, take a scroll through that and, like, see if any of these look familiar. So the doll that he picked out, and he's like, I'm pretty sure this is the one, was from Deep Red, like Dario Argento's Deep Red. And so I played a clip of it with this doll in it, and, like, basically the guy gets his mouth, he essentially gets curb stomped, but on, like, a mantle of, like, a fireplace.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh my god, like, this is so violent, and he's, like, laughing, and he, like, it just, like, gets too much for him, you can tell, and he like, basically, like, shoves my phone back at me, and then he's, like, laughing, and he's like, holy god. And then I was like, you know, horror's actually, like, a really intelligent genre. Like, it has, like, a lot to say. It's, like, a lot of social commentary and stuff like that, and he won't stop laughing. He's like, yeah, I'm sure it is. So he, for instance, like, he would be someone to be like, this is just, like, pure, you know,
like trash,
depravity, or depravity, or however you say it. But.
Which, like you said, is interesting to kind of tie in what you were talking about, Mike, because her grandfather is, like, a really big fan of, like, British detective murder She Wrote S-type stuff.
Oh, of course, where there's mutilated corpses, but
you don't see
as long as the cops are on the case, then yeah,
pretty much.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting, I think, and it's a bigger conversation in general, just, the lines that thrillers and stuff it's a very thin line between, like, what's a horror, what's a thriller.
Well, actually, this person that I followed the other day on Twitter, I'll tell you their name, hold on. They posed a question. They actually, the reason I followed them, because they, like, just pose these random questions, and I think some of them are quite, like, thought-provoking. It's something about being a blob, their name is. But anyways, so their question was like, what is horror?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, because, I think that very frequently we have to grapple with that here, mostly because of my picks.
Well,
but it's a question. It truly is like a legitimate capital Q question.
Yeah. So their name is Judah1313, and that's their handle, and then their name is I Am Being Blob. And that's what I said. I was like, that's actually something we struggle with a lot, like when we're picking movies for the podcast.
Yeah, and we always try to push the boundary, and I know that's part of the reason. I mean, sometimes I'm just like, I really want to talk about this movie, so that's why I pick it. But obviously I'm not going to pick something that you can't make an argument for. And I feel like sometimes I like doing that because it really does get you to question these, like, boundaries and, like, the margins and all these definitions, and, like, some of them are fairly arbitrary. And again, like, I feel like I made a good argument for why this could be horror. And it's the same thing, like, every week when we do this, it's like, is this horror just because... And I feel like there's some things where it's just, like, exploding bodies everywhere that isn't horror. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, it's like, what is it that makes it horror?
Yeah, and it's a constantly shifting definition. It's a constantly shifting conversation. And, like... But that's what's so great about it. Like, anything about, like, genre is just, like, it's got to be such a dialogue. It's discourse, essentially.
Yeah, I was gonna ask this, like, way back in the conversation, but then the conversation kind of just, like, evolved elsewhere. But do you think that these photos would be controversial today, in 2021?
No.
See, I disagree, because, there'd be people on the internet, like, the type.
It's actually funny that you mention that, because when I was watching it, I was thinking this would be something to talk about.
Yeah.
Because part of me thinks that, this is 1978, and, like, this kind of, like, highly stylized photography, because you're used to seeing your violence portrayed in, like, grindhouse, grainy horror films, not in sleek commercial, because it's literally commercial. Like, the whole thing is, she has these clients and they're trying to sell cars and shit, but the cars are exploded and there's dead bodies everywhere, right? And it's the whole, like, notion that, like, you're pairing this sleek commercial thing with the violence.
Yeah.
And I feel like at the time that was way ahead of its time, and that was something that was really being grappled with because it was just starting to happen. So I want to say, sure, in the, like, 40 odd years since then, we've moved on. But I was looking at them and I was like, we've seen, like, art photography and, like, fashion photography doing this over and over and over, and film. But honestly, I feel like today, when you look at that, if you looked and saw a commercial with that in it, it would still upset people.
That'd be really controversial.
Yeah, I'm rescinding my answer.
Yeah.
I'm saying no, too, because now that I think about it, I feel like, there's no way these would fly. I feel like, Jesus, you can't say anything. I'll sound like a damn... I'll sound like a damn
It's
Trumper
like the morality police are
Yeah.
still, like, that has not gone anywhere. There's still this, like, kind of puritanical, moral, like, rubric that certain people have, that stuff like this is never going to fly through. It doesn't matter if we're desensitized to it, like, it's not going to fly.
And there's always, like, moral panic about this stuff,
And absolutely, and it goes in cycles, and you
Yeah.
see it, like, every 10 years, right? Like,
and we really haven't progressed that far from with accepting violence, because exactly, I feel like there's still, I think we're almost like, or less accepting of violence, because we are living in a society that's so much about, like, safety and stuff like that. Sorry, Rowan, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, like, I feel too that these photos, if taken today for, like Mike said, a commercial shoot,
it wouldn't happen.
This is like, I feel like on Twitter, this would cause, like, so much infighting with like popular feminists on Twitter, because I just, you'd have that whole like this depiction of murdering women and it's commercial.
No, it's murdering men.
Yeah, I know that, but murder in general.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's like the gift and the curse of social media. I think it would be picked apart.
But then you have...
And then, I'm just saying, then companies would pull it. Like, they'd be like, no.
I mean, and then you have the people on the right that are like, these feminazis, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah, no, it's true, right?
Yeah.
It's true. There's always that, like, kind of policing of art.
Yeah.
They're not interested in discourse. They're not interested in engagement. They're interested in shutting it down. And that's true, though. And that's true. And then there is that sort of, and that is the thing these days. Back then, it was like, oh, we're more open to, like, art and, you know, like, let's do this. Let's do something different and, you know, interesting and let's have a conversation. But, you know, now when people do that, I feel like it's like gone to a different extreme where it's like they don't want to have a conversation. They still want to kind of shut it down, you know? So I feel like it would still be intensely controversial.
So before we get too far into it, I need to know your guys' favorite kills, favorite scenes. And I'm going to put it on Mike first.
Okay, I'll tell you my favorite scene. It's not a kill per se. It's just a scene that I literally always remember, and actually I posted a still from it on my Twitter a couple days ago when I was rewatching the movie. And it's the scene where near the beginning of the movie where she does her first real like setup for a photo shoot, and it's the one where she's out on the streets and the cars are on fire and they're playing that amazing song, which by the way, like, we have not talked about this and we have to. The song, all the music used in this
we'll
movie,
get
Barbara
to it.
Streisand, we won't go there yet, but like the song that they play during this, which is Burn, and it's by these two people that I don't think have ever like put anything out since. I think they just wrote it for this movie. But it has that like crazy intense like New York hot summer vibe while she's shooting the girls like in front of a car that's on fire, but there's like the fountain in the background, so it's like fire and water and all the elements, and like they're pulling at each other and wearing like these crazy cool coats and stuff. And I just think that that's such an intense scene, like with the music blaring over it, and that's the whole point. It feels really chaotic, and I just like drank it up. And it's just beautiful. It's beautiful watching somebody like, and she's like, you know, Faye is like wearing these like really cool boots and stuff, and like they're lighting everything, and it's kind of like a cool, like watching someone behind the scenes, and it's just very intense, and it's such a great moment in the movie, and I love it.
So how about you, Xylia?
I like the scene when they do the exhibit.
Oh, yeah.
I have two. I like that scene. And then, I actually don't have a favorite kill, but my other favorite scene is not nearly as, like, exquisite as Mike's, but it's when she turns on the light and she's in her bedroom and she wakes up. Because if that bedroom didn't have carpet, I would, like, kind of be all about it.
Okay, hang on. I need to read the note that I have in my notebook right now. Okay. It's the fourth thing that I wrote while watching this. X will love this apartment.
It's true.
I was like, the whole time I was like, X is gonna be like dripping over this apartment.
I really like the apartment.
I love the apartment. I don't know about having like a bedroom full of mirrors, but you know, like, I'm kind of into it. But yeah,
but I mean, like, it's also like a choice in terms of like the whole movie. It's like Eyes of Laura Mars, and it's all about like looking and seeing and like the ways that we see, like, are like through your eyes, through a camera, through a mirror, through somebody else's eyes, right? And I just thought that having those scenes and the shots and with the mirrors everywhere was such a like really cool commentary on like how we see and how we look, and how things are refracted 5 times before they get to our eyeballs.
Great for the movie, maybe not great for like reality.
Practically, it is awful.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can only imagine the like nightmare. I hate it. I'm sorry, this is somebody who, the only mirror I have in my that I've ever had in an apartment in the last like 10 years has been whatever the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. I never have mirrors in my bedroom. I don't like looking at myself. I get dressed and don't look at myself in the morning. Like, I hate mirrors. So like having a mirror all over my bedroom is literally a fucking nightmare. If I'm at work and I look up and see myself in a mirror, I like actually get frightened.
Oh my god.
I can't imagine waking up and sitting up in bed and then looking at yourself. Oh my god.
Oh, I have a mirror right in front of like my like right in front of where I wake up, like in my bed. I also bought a mirror for my living room today.
She has a lot of decorative mirrors that don't have real mirror purposes.
I can't even see myself in the mirror I put in my living room because it's too high, but it's just for the aesthetic.
Yeah, but see, also, I got traumatized when I was very young when I saw Poltergeist 3 on TV and all that, and they were all in mirrors, so I just have hated mirrors ever since I was, like, a youngin' anyway.
That's fair.
But I also just hate looking at myself, so...
I was gonna say, I did love the apartment, because if I remember correctly, it has my all-time favorite apartment feature where it goes, like, down.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that.
Oh, a sunken floor? Yeah.
Like... Mad Men style. If you can have an apartment that's down and even has like almost like a balcony
was
on
it in the living room? That's it's called a conversation pit.
Conversation pit, yeah.
Love it. That's like my all-time favorite thing.
Yeah.
I just love that feature.
I just want to say that in my old place when my friends lived upstairs, it wasn't a pit per se, but like when the like hallway / dining room is what met up, and then you had the living room off of that, it did go down a bit, so you could sit, like we used to sit around the step.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit sunken in, and that was my favorite thing ever. I thought it was a great feature. Now, not so great when you're at a party and you've drank
True.
your body weight in alcohol and you can barely stand up and you're tripping over it. And like we used to trip over it and fall down all the time. But aesthetically, conversation pits are chef's kiss.
Yeah, I love it.
Beautiful. So my favorite kills, favorite scenes. I also don't think I necessarily have a favorite kill in this, but I will do the typical Xylia cheat with 2 favorite scenes. Number 1, just the intro. Once that Barbra Streisand song kicks in, which we have added to the playlist on Spotify.
It's a banger.
Man.
It's a banger.
It is like super, super epic.
Yeah.
So just all of that. Like when that kicked in, I was like, yeah, I'm sold. I'm in for the ride on this one. This movie can be a piece of shit as long as this is the song.
Oh yeah, you got that belter opening and closing the movie. Like that bookend of Barbara belting. The triple B. Barbara belting bookend. It's just perfection.
Well, and I thought it was kind of funny, especially where Irvin Kershner has directed a Bond film, because it reminded me of like a Bond intro with like that grand kind of like ballad.
Oh yeah, it's very much like Shirley Bassey, like Goldfinger.
Yeah.
But it's funny because he directed her in something before this, Up the Sandbox, and I think that they were together. I don't know if they were married, but I do believe that they were an item for a while. And rumor has it that she was actually supposed to be in this, but then she just did the theme song instead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I did read that this whole project was created for her.
Yeah, it was like a Barbara vehicle.
And this was gonna be like kind of her like, rise in the film world.
Oh yeah, get into like the lucrative thriller world in the late 70s, come on.
But I think I read like something, I think she just thought it might be like a little too like risque or something.
Yeah.
But the song, like, I'm glad she kept the song, because the song is a banger.
Oh, it's epic. It's epic. Like, every song used in this movie is epic, but that one in particular, like, oh yeah, I want to wake up in the morning and just, if I had a mirror in my bedroom, I'd get out of bed and just look at myself and like blare that Barbra Streisand Prisoner song. Like, it's... Prisoner reprise at the end of the day.
And then, so probably my second favorite scene, we're gonna go all the way to the end. I love the scene with Tommy Lee Jones, like when he stabs the mirror, and like that whole thing, like what great acting from Tommy Lee Jones. Like, I just thought it was really well done. He did a really good job. It was like, he just did an awesome job, like, making it a little unsettling, and just, like, him talking and, like, his frantic mind going, where you kind of, I know when me and Xylia watch it, like, and Xylia was like, well, who's he talking about, and what's he talking about?
I missed one crucial line, and it just kind of, like, fucked the whole thing up for me.
It snowballed, yeah.
But I like, because you kind of have to piece it together, like, because one moment he's talking about, like, Raoul's character, and then, but really he's talking about him.
Yeah, he just, like, flips a pronoun at like one point, and if you're
Yeah.
not paying attention, you don't notice it.
Yeah.
But that's what's so great about it. Like, you're right, because that performance is so slick. He just flicks from like that charming, like, oh my god, like Tommy Lee Jones swoon, like take care of Faye, to, you know, he just flicks a switch and you don't even realize it.
And, I mean, obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you know we don't give spoiler alerts. The whole damn thing's a spoiler.
Listen, yeah, it's...
But, I mean, the twist at the end got me. Like, I did not think it was Tommy Lee Jones.
Well, because Rowan's like, I don't get it. Who's the killer? And I was like, what if it's him? And then he was like, I don't think so.
Which I think it's really good for the time period, because of course I was like, oh, it's like the 70s, like, I'm like, they're gonna keep the love interest thing, and that's gonna kind of be there till the end, and not really. What I should have been processing is it's John Carpenter, and he is definitely gonna give us something good at the end. But yeah, those are my favorite scenes. You touched on it briefly, Mike. I did want us to talk a bit, because the first thing I thought about when I was watching this was kind of the critique on the male gaze, you know, because I think it's pretty heavy in this, you know, because we don't know if it's a woman or a man murdering. Like you said, we get this gaze, like
typical man asking the other man about the male gaze.
Well, no,
I'm just
you didn't let me finish.
I'm just kidding.
So what I was hoping is that maybe Xylia could explain the male gaze with her wonderful sociological mind for the listeners.
I was gonna say, I'm barely a man, so please don't.
So yeah, Xylia, maybe you could explain the male gaze for everybody.
It's basically when a man basically has a representation of a woman, like say in visual media, the woman as like a sexual object, basically. That's just the purpose, is there to be a sexual object for heterosexual men in the audience, basically.
Yeah, and it's like the camera is a substitute for
the man,
the eye of the male.
Yeah.
So like when you're looking at a movie and you see a woman undressing, you know, it's like through the eyes of a man.
Yeah.
It's not a camera, it's the gaze of the male. And we should, because I remember I got in trouble. Not in trouble. I was having a conversation with somebody when I was in undergrad and university, and I was reading a book on the bus, and it was about film theory, and this girl that I knew came up to me and sat down, and she's like, oh my god, what are you reading? And, you know, I was like, oh, it's this book about the male gaze, and I was telling her about it and we were sitting there, and she was just sort of not, and this is a really, like, this girl was so smart and so brilliant, but she was just kind of, like, looking at me blankly and going like, uh-huh. And then after me, like, just explaining it and going like, oh my god, like, she doesn't understand what I'm saying, like, what's going on. She looks at me and goes, oh my god, you mean G-A-Z-E, like the look of the male. She goes, I just kept hearing male gaze and thought it was G-A-Y-S, like plural gay males. I was like, no, like the gaze, like the look of the male, the act of looking. So we should just clarify that we're talking about looking as a male, yeah.
And that's why I'm always like quite suspicious of movies, or anything, but in this case, of movies that are done by men that try to be, I think we talked about it maybe during the House episode, that try to be like hyper feminist, but yeah. I'm always very critical because like
the lens is still,
it's still a man.
A male, yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't know your guys' opinion, like I thought, like Mike brought up, there's a lot of commentary about like not just male gaze, but like lenses and things we see through, like
literally
mirrors.
The camera.
Yeah, the camera, your eyes. But I mean, I definitely didn't feel that this movie was trying to be like a critique on that, or like on a gaze, or necessarily.
No, I think
it wasn't
you're right.
Trying to be like a feminist film.
It wasn't a movie that like the crux of it was a critique of that or an interrogation. You know, it was very clearly a, you know, like kind of a pulpy noir thriller, but I feel like it just was influenced by all of the film theory and the, you know, kind of like discourse at the time, and you know, but like with anything, you know, it says things that it doesn't mean to say.
Exactly.
You know, that's like Freud for you. You know, that's the psychoanalysis. Like, it's, you know, give me lines to read between. Like, it's saying things that it doesn't mean to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that you are correct in saying that it was not explicitly setting out to be that critique, because they only address that explicitly in the movie like twice near the beginning, and then it just sort of falls into that noir thriller mode.
I feel like if basically the only message that we put across to people was one that was intentional, you wouldn't be able to like have cultural studies and stuff like that.
Exactly.
These people are informed by culture and like different things that they've read, different interactions they've had. I mean, those things are inevitably going to shape what they produce.
Exactly. Like I said, like it's the climate of the time was very much Laura Mulvey, that like psychoanalytic film criticism, and I feel like John Carpenter, like I feel like he did film criticism too. So I feel like he would have been hyper aware of that sort of school of thought.
Yeah.
And as a like, you know, fairly intelligent filmmaker, you know, that would have been in his mind. So I feel like, you know, again, as with anything, when you look at it through that kind of like psychoanalytic lens, you will see these things bubbling up, whether they mean it or not. And like you said about horror in general, it sort of like magnetizes elements of society and culture just by virtue of what it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It sort of picks up. And, oh my god, who was it? Bloom, somebody was talking about the anxiety of influence, you know, and it's like, it's this school of thought where the more you claim to not be influenced by something is actually like...
the more you are influenced.
The more you are influenced by it, even if it's subconsciously. So I just keep thinking of the meme of Mariah Carey saying, "No, I never heard of her."
Yeah.
Right? And that every time I see that, I laugh because I think about like writing essays on the anxiety of influence. It's like the lady doth protest too much.
That's
even if you say I've never heard of that person or I don't know that like school of thought, like the more you kind of like claim not to have been influenced by it, the more there's like potentially a chance that
you will
subconsciously
be.
you are. Yeah.
So not to get too deep into a rabbit hole, but I was thinking as I was watching this and with it being written by John Carpenter, because I thought with Laura Mars, like, it was almost very intentionally like she wasn't sexualized whatsoever in this film.
No, not really.
Even though she's like the object of Tommy Lee Jones' desire, like, she dresses very modestly, like, she's
she's very much like high-collared blouses, you know, that like go up to her chin.
Maybe he's sexually attracted to modest dress.
No, but I was thinking about then, you know, this theme, like, we also get that with, like, Laurie Strode, like, this kind of theme of John Carpenter where he really, like, doesn't sexualize the female lead. But then I guess just my critical brain then thought, is there also a negative side to that where these lead females, like, almost don't have a sexuality at all?
I mean, it's
they're made to be... They're always, like we said, like, clothes up to your neck, like, they're always...
I think it's, like, there should be a balance, you know? Women, we're people, you know? We're sexual beings, but also not always just, like, you know, like a
But you can't be reduced to that at the same time.
Exactly, that's not all women are, but women are that as well. As,
We're
like
manifold human beings, like, there's many facets, right?
Well, and
but that's what's, like, film, like, Final Girl theory says that, like, specifically that person who survives is going to be less sexualized.
Yeah.
Because that makes them, like, less feminine and more male.
Yeah.
Because males aren't traditionally or sexualized.
Well, and it's interesting because, like, this is, I mean, now you're, like, going down a whole thing, but that's kind of the issue with kind of pushing women more in the direction of, if you're feminist, you should be more masculine, and, like, kind of looking down upon women that are, like, quite a bit more on the feminine side. But I mean, that just kind of, you know, plays into, like, sexism as well.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's about balance. And, like, women aren't one-dimensional. That's kind of what the Bechdel test is about. So, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like it's a rabbit hole of it could, like we said, like you're kind of projecting your own thoughts and everything into these films, even if the creators didn't intend it.
There's, I think, a difference maybe between being sexual and being sexualized.
Yes, and it's funny because this movie sort of looks at that, because she does have, like you said, she's not overly sexualized, but she is sexual with Tommy Lee Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have all these critics in this movie, like the reviewers and even Tommy Lee Jones himself when he shows up at a review, saying that she's sexualizing, right? Like, her photos are very much about, like, the naked, slicked up bodies. And, she's friends with these people, like Lulu, who, by the way, we have not mentioned Lulu the model, Queen. Like, her interviews with the cops and stuff just cracked me up. Like, what an interesting character, and she's so charismatic. And, like, she even says she's kind of, like, has that kind of model, like, ooh, I don't know what I'm talking about. But, like, I found that whole play between, like, her as a woman in the movie, like, sexualizing a woman in the name of art, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the whole interplay of it, I thought, was so fucking amazing, and it's just so thought-provoking. And even though I think, like, 1978, like, it's still, all of the issues kind of at play here, I think are still sadly, frighteningly relevant.
I think my opinion is, like, just in terms of life, I don't think other people should sexualize anybody, or women in particular. I think women should have full autonomy, and, it's their choice what to do, not anybody else's.
It would definitely be odd if you thought differently.
Would it? Because lots of people do.
I mean, I guess if you were,
it's kind of a WAP.
But I mean,
kind of a WAP conversation.
And, like, the funny thing is that we won't go too far down this rabbit hole. But, like, I think you're bringing up all these really interesting points. Like, it kind of ventures into that sort of thought of, like you kind of get with, like, people arguing, like, for and against sex work, and it's like saying that people are being exploited, and and that's the thing. It's like, if someone is sexualizing themselves, is that sexualizing? Like, what is it? It's and who gets to make that decision, and who gets to say who is doing it to who?
It's interesting.
And like who is saying who has agency and who doesn't? You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's really interesting because Rowan and I actually randomly had this exact conversation in the car today. I recently read this book of poetry. I think it's based out of the U.S. Called A Whore's Manifesto, and it's the whole point of it. So there's, like, people of color, there's non-binary folks, there's transgender like sex workers. Like, it's the focus of, like, people on the margins, and the whole point of the book was to show that sex workers aren't a monolith. There's some people that, like, are coerced into it and don't want to do it and are really quite doing it against their will. And then there's some people that are just doing it. And I personally have known both. I've known people that do sex work that it's not 100% their choice. And then I know people who have done it that it is 100% their choice. Now, I find the difference between that is the people who it's not, it's, like, very much mediated by someone else, obviously, whereas the women that I know that do it because they want to do it, something they feel maybe empowered by, or what, who knows. And I think that if that's something you want to do, like, that's perfectly fine. Do I think people should be, like, forced to do that against their will? Obviously not. But if that's something that you, like, you go out and do out of your own free choice, then, like, who am I to say no?
Right? And that's kind of similar to the argument about, like, horror movies in general, and about the, like, photos that she takes in this. And it's like, exactly, everything isn't a monolith, and you can't treat everybody as if they're being exploited. And that's what I loved, like, the models in this, like Lulu, like, they clearly enjoy this work that they're doing. She has things to say about these photographs. She really enjoys it. She, is, like, laughing about the, like, gun and the blood and stuff. So you can't, like, who's gonna say that she's exploited when she would probably make the argument herself that she's not? Again, maybe some people are, right? But it's the same, and it's just, you can't make these blanket arguments for people,
Yeah.
you know, and because doing that actually takes their agency away by saying that they have no agency.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing. Like people in horror movies are exploited, or you know, like it's just can't make that argument because it's reductive.
Right. And now obviously, like, if you've listened to what we say, we don't condone people being exploited.
Oh, no.
In any way.
Don't speak for everyone.
Well, I'm just saying Mike and I don't condone people being exploited.
Neither do I.
Or Rowan. But, yeah, it's just important to...
Let people speak for themselves, I guess, right?
And Rowan and I were speaking about, like, the privilege that comes along with being able to make that choice for yourself. Like, the privileged background that the people I know personally that have been involved in sex work, that have chosen that for themselves, they do all come from, like, very privileged backgrounds. It wasn't like, I'm not gonna eat, or I'm gonna, you know what, there wasn't a choice in terms of that. But yeah, it's a really interesting topic that I feel like you could have, you know, I mean, there's millions of books and courses and
probably podcasts that
probably you know, it's beyond the scope of this podcast.
Podcasts that aren't gonna, right after you listen to this in-depth conversation, like talk about Barbra Streisand songs and stuff.
I mean, it's kind of the same with violence against women in movies. I literally work with women that have had, like, atrociously violent things happen to them, and watching horror is not about condoning violence against women. There's, you know, you gotta take it all into context and, like, you know.
No, exactly. I thought I had a note about the ending of the movie, and that was sort of similar to what you're saying there. And, my thoughts were that, like, at the end of it was that Tommy Lee Jones in the movie, when he first shows up at her exhibit, you know, makes a comment about how depraved it is and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously then he speaks to, like, these reporters that are there just for the salacious, like, oh, this is disgusting and this is going to cause violence. You know, and then he talks about, like, his incredibly fucked up life, you know, that he had and the traumas that he suffered. And I was like, all I could think of was, you know, the funny thing about, you know, that argument about, like, you know, does, like, representation of violence beget violence? But reality is so much more fucked up.
It's so
than
much more,
any representation of violence could be. So, like, you can't say, you know, like, it's
there's also
like the violence and shit, like, predates a representation of it.
Right.
The representation is like a symptom.
Yeah,
essentially.
Exactly.
You can't say, like, let's eradicate the symptom. That's like saying, you know, let's put a fucking Band-Aid over it and not actually treat the problem.
Right.
Just keep putting Band-Aids over that cut, but, like...
And for those of us who have experienced, like, trauma that has, you know, resulted from violence, some people find watching horror movies very cathartic for that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people find it incredibly triggering.
Yeah.
Depending on where
But again, it's because
you're
you
at,
can't,
but...
not everybody, like, the psychology of it is different for every individual.
Yeah, some people find it's, like, you know, a really good release. So, yeah, it's just like people are complicated.
We're messes of human beings, we are, and that's the fucking best way to be, beautiful messes.
Yeah.
So, I guess to get on to something a little more lighter for topic, I want to know if I'm the only one that, when I watch a 70s horror movie or 70s movies in general, I just always think about made-for-TV movies. Like, I feel they all have that kind of aesthetic.
Yes, well, that's why I was thinking Murder, She Wrote.
I really...
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
I really liked the pick, Mike, because, like, the client I work with at my work, he, like, pretty much exclusively watches, like, really terrible made-for-TV movies. He find, like, that we find them on YouTube from, like, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s.
I have a whole playlist on my YouTube of weird, shitty 60s, 70s, 80s, like, made-for-TV movies.
I already told Xylia that I want to make a new podcast where I just review made-for-TV movies.
Oh, we're doing it. I've got... My next few picks are gonna be, like, shit you gotta watch on YouTube, so just prepare yourself.
Jeez.
But it's so funny that you mention that, because while I was watching this, I was thinking of another John Carpenter movie that I sort of alluded to earlier that I haven't watched in years. I only ever saw it, like, once on some movie channel or something. But He did around this time. I don't know the exact date. Give me 1 second. It was in the late 70s. It was the same year as this. Actually, it was 1978. It was called Someone's Watching Me. And it starred another beautiful blonde, Lauren Hutton. We love. Stan her, adore her. And it was about her in a high-rise being watched by somebody. And, you know, it was like creepy phone calls and stuff. But again, it's that like voyeurism and like viewing and like the gaze and like subjugation and like agency and stuff like that. So and you know, that was a classic kind of like 70s prototypical TV movie thriller.
Yeah.
Right? About this woman who's being like harassed. You know, it was very much like cutting edge. And I just thought it was so funny because I was watching this and I was going, this is definitely an upscale movie. Like, you got Faye Dunaway, you know, you have Tommy Lee Jones, you have the director of Empire Strikes Back, you know, you've got Helmut Newton doing the photographs and this like really crazy, like really cool, you know, 70s like disco score. Barbara Streisand, but it does call to mind that like TV movie aesthetic.
Yes, definitely.
So I thought that's a really cool like pickup.
Xylia says yes, definitely. As she fell asleep 3 times. She knows that made for TV movie struggle.
Yeah.
So are we comfortable to get into, is it scary or unsettling?
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with you, Xylia.
I didn't really think so. I think the only thing that was like semi-unsettling about it was that she could see the murders through her own eyes. I guess if that's the way to word it. Like,
by the way, I love that they never ever like explain that. And I think that's also, and I neglected to mention this when we were talking about like what makes it a horror movie. I think that's like peak horror movie is that like she kind of has these psychic powers. So it has this supernatural element that's just never investigated.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just taken for granted, yes.
So, yeah, I feel like if I was her, I would probably be unsettled by that.
Mike, how about you?
I mean, no, I didn't find it unsettling or scary, really. I liked the ideas that it presented, and I thought the investigation of kind of like the nature of thriller and horror and the impact on that like it's supposed to have on society and like can art cause real life damage by inspiring other people to, you know, act on it?
Yeah.
Vaguely unsettling, but not really. I mean, I was along for the ride. It was like a nice stylish thriller that I just, you know, loved drinking my glass of wine and getting washed away in it.
So I will say no to either one. I found throughout the film, like, a lot of the loud kind of noises unsettling, but then I just realized it was Xylia snoring, and that I had to pause the movie. No, I mean, like I said, it's kind of got that, like, made for TV quality, so it wasn't anything like too intense. I didn't need to shut it off because my heart couldn't take anymore. I mean, other than when I saw Raul Julia's eyes, that was pretty much it. So let's get into rating this. This was your pick, Mike. We'll start with you.
Okay, I'll give it my rating and qualify. So I'm giving it a yay, but I do realize, like, I'm not saying this is a fantastic movie. I know it's flawed in many ways. I know that it's got plot holes everywhere. Like, these are things that I realize, but I also think that, as we sort of touched on earlier, even garbage like, you know, grade Z shit that got pumped out of someone's basement, you can look at it, and because horror is like a sponge for kind of the world around it, whether it realizes it is or not, like every horror movie can kind of like hold up to like social critique. But I think that this one in particular has a lot going on beneath the surface that just watching it as a thriller is not really going to pick at. Like, there's a lot to unpack. Aesthetically, ideas, like sociologically, psychoanalytically, there's a lot going on, and I feel like it's one of those that like you could watch a bunch of times and kind of riff on. And because of that, I think that it transcends the like I feel like it's a serviceable, stylish thriller.
Yeah.
Like, it's a pretty decent thriller for 1978. It doesn't hold up spectacularly because I feel like, you know, a lot of shit that came after it was way more sophisticated in terms of plot. But like, you know, again, this is like round about the same time as he put out Halloween. So you're looking at something that's kind of like essentially a more slick mainstream slasher movie, just dressed up in like, you know, fancy designer clothes. So I feel like in that way there's like a lot to unpack. So I will give it a yay for the like layers that we can dig at in this movie. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I was getting after Xylia about explaining things and I failed. So if you're a new listener, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, and slay.
You go next, Rowan.
So I'm going to go next. So I'm going to give it an okay. I think I like this a little less than Mike. I will say I kind of, turning it on, expected to give it a nay. I saw the trailer. I was like, it's probably going to be a nay for me. I have to split it up. The movie gets an okay. The theme song gets a slay.
Yes, Prisoner Barbara, sing it, bitch.
The song came in, it was banging, and I was like, all right, I'm all for this.
I'll bet now that you wish that you had seen this movie when you were teenagers and you used it as your wedding song.
Oh my god.
Can you imagine? I can only imagine you guys like walking down to the aisle, but to Prisoner by Barbara Streisand.
I wish. Yeah, no, it turned out better than I thought. I did think it had periods where it lulled a bit, and, you know, I thought probably could have been tightened up, but especially like the last 20 minutes, I really enjoyed it. I didn't know who the killer was, so the twist ending, I was like, oh shit. And like, I thought it was fun, and I think it gets bumped up to an okay for me because of everything we've kind of said. Like, I think it has a lot of interesting conversation points in it that if you watch this, you could talk to people about and have a very interesting, intelligent conversation, or just talk about how all these people were young and dreamy. But yeah, it's gonna get an okay from me. How about yourself, Xylia?
So, I was originally gonna give it a nay. Overall, plot-wise, I thought it was pretty damn bland. But I love the aesthetic, like the interior design aesthetic. I love like the fashion aesthetic aspect. And mostly I'm gonna give it an okay because of the conversations you can have about it. So this, going into recording, I was gonna give it a nay, but I've rethought it and I think that the conversation alone warrants an okay.
So 2 okays and a yay. I say that's pretty fair. Yeah. I was expecting a lot less from this.
I was fully expecting 2 nays from you guys, so this is going much better than I thought it would. Much better, thank you.
So
I feel vindicated in my decision right now. Although, listen, bitches, you know that I'll purposely pick things that I think you're gonna hate, because I want to have that argument.
That's right. Bring that heat. So next up, we have the budget game. If you're a new listener, the way this works is I know how much the movie cost and how much it made, and Xylia and Mike have to guess, and if Xylia loses, she has to ship her cats to Newfoundland.
What?
We all know the cats are gonna hate me, so that's just an awful idea, but we'll do it.
So, how much does the movie cost? Xylia, I'm interested to hear your opinion.
$1 million on the dot.
$1 million on the dot? Mike?
I will say, like, 6 million. Because I feel like, you know, at the time, like, Faye Dunaway was very much, like, in her Oscar peak.
So, Mike, you're gonna take it.
What?
Damn! First time in weeks.
This movie costs $7 million.
Oh my god.
Oh my god! Wow.
Faye and Tommy were not cheap, I guess. And
like, they had Cool in the gang, like, or no, Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Yeah,
sorry,
Casey
like,
the Sunshine Band, like the music.
Barbara, like.
And I'm thinking too, what did you say his name was? Like the photographer and stuff? Like
Helmut Newton, yeah, this was like an expensive.
They probably had to pay a pretty penny for him to do that. Okay, how much do you think it made, Mike?
I'm gonna say like $11 million.
$11 million?
I just wanted to have recouped its budget, that's all.
$3 million.
So Mike, you're gonna take the whole round. So this movie made $20 million.
Oh my god.
Listen, girl, your cynicism sunk you this episode, okay? I'm just saying.
It almost tripled what it made.
Congratulations.
Yeah, big time. Big time. So next up, we just have some of our shameless promotion. So just to let you know, if you want to hear the banger that is Barbra Streisand Prisoner, it is on the It Slays podcast horrific playlist on Spotify. Hear that and so many more great songs from movies we've reviewed or movies that we might review in the future.
But unfortunately, you will not hear the Michael Ski and Uverstein song Burn, which is played while she's taking the photographs in front of the burning cars, because that shit is only available on bootleg.
Damn.
But I do have it, so DM me if you want the link.
Make sure to follow us on all our social media. It Slays Podcast. If you want to get yourself some merch, I know we got some rockin' shirts, and I've been rocking a face mask. There's totes. You can go to Redbubble, look up It Slays Podcast, and buy yourself something. Also, if you enjoy what you hear and you want to help financially support the podcast so we can do cool things, it helps upgrade.
I.e. do what you want us to.
Exactly. $5 tier, you get to pick what we do.
And guess what? I have my sole New Year's resolution this year is to ship things and mail them in a timely manner. That's why Mike has gotten his present after 5 years, as well as
5 years.
Colton has gotten a card.
Oh.
And Jennifer, she has gotten a second card.
That's right.
We love you guys.
So yeah,
Smooches,
go to
kisses, sloppy wet kisses.
Go to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and check it out. And yeah, you get a shout out on the show. We'll shout you out. Maybe you pick what we review.
Or even come on and, shoot
That's
the
right.
shit.
Review it yourself.
Pick a shitty movie like Cecily did and come on and talk about it with us. By the way, hopefully having her back again soon. Wink, wink.
And lastly, we would greatly appreciate it if you gave us a review on iTunes, a star, and a text one. Because if you leave a text review, we'll read it on the podcast, no matter if it's good or bad.
Especially if you're critical of me.
That's right.
Just read me, bitches. Throw me under the bus.
Put
Just
on those
read
reading
me.
glasses.
That's right. Read.
The library is always open here, okay?
It helps get us seen more on iTunes when people search for horror podcasts. So it helps us, and we'd greatly appreciate it. There is no announcement for a next movie because we are waiting for the end of the month. We are waiting. The voting is going frantically right now. Every day there's a new vote for what 2 films we're going to review in February for our 2-year anniversary.
Oh my god, I could vomit. 2 years.
I know, right? We're in round 2 of voting, so make sure to follow our social media because we'll announce them once we have the final 2. So that is everything, and next time you hear us, we'll be celebrating our month-long anniversary, and we are excited to review movies that you guys have picked for us.
We're like the annoying bitch who says, "It's my birthday week." Like, you get 1 day. No, it's our birthday month.
It's our birthday month, and we've been reminding you for 2 months.
That's right. And just, keep an eye on the social media stuff, because,
there's let's just say a modern day treat bag up for grabs.
That's right.
Come to our party, leave with a treat bag.
We're gonna definitely be posting about all the cool things that you can win. So keep an eye out, and no, Mike, you can't enter to win it. So you're out of luck.
I just want to wear my own face on a t-shirt, okay? Soon.
So I think that is everything. As always, thank you for the immense support. We enjoy doing this. I am your humble host, Rowan.
Bye, it's Xylia.
It's Mike. Goodbye.
See you later.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
return some videotapes.